Any of us can think of the things that we normally purchase on our credit card and the convenience at which it is to use a credit card, and how much of your daily life is actually visible through your credit card statement. Is pretty amazing, right? So I could see patterns of use, patterns of behavior. I can know things about the kind of person you might be, the kind of lifestyle you might live, your spending habits. Do you tend to spend a lot at the beginning? If you're paid monthly, do you spend a lot at the beginning of the month and very little at the end?
Many young people barely know what cash looks like. They use credit cards for anything. Many of us do. I shouldn't say young people. It's true for me as well. Use credit cards for everything because there are incentives to do it. But they're great data collection tools. We give up lots of information about ourselves.
It is the only anonymous way to conduct any kind of business. The problem with cash is it's rapidly becoming an anachronism. If you don't think so, take $10,000 and go and try and put it down in cash on a new car. But by the time you get the papers signed, you'll be sitting with two FBI agents wanting to know where the $10,000 came from. Because if you're transferring more than $10,000 can be a crime. Now, that means that now cash isn't that anonymous except in smaller amounts. And how small is a smaller amount? There are things that you can buy for $20 or $30, but if you go any higher than that, if you bring $100 bills, most stores won't take them.
There is a desire by several forces coming together who do want to add a biometric identifier to government identification. So the leading push in the United States is most likely a biometric added to your driver's license. That biometric is most likely going to be a fingerprint. Under that model, the fingerprint becomes your new Social Security number. So what does that mean? I'm touching the chair, I'm touching the table, I'm leaving my fingerprints behind. You come along with a piece of tape and some dust, you pick up my print, you stick it on a fake ID, and now you're me, right? As proved by this phony fingerprint that you just lifted up, right? And then if things get really bad with your identity theft and Social Security numbers, you can actually get a new Social Security number. But what do I do about getting new fingerprints?
I'm always forgetting my wallet. And then I can't find it and I don't know where it is. And the idea that maybe someone could put an RFID chip somewhere where I would just have to wave my arm, it's a very attractive proposition.
There are plenty of reasons, I think, to be worried about a cashless society where we have microchips implanted in our hands and simply make our payments in that way. For one thing, you would be unable to ever make a payment or make a purchase that someone wasn't watching and recording in a database. Marketers would love to get a hold of that. Hackers can hack into that. The government could use it, to investigate you or try to control your behavior.
Nobody ever reads those disclosure requirements. No one. So I every year when I teach this material at Harvard, I ask my big class, who has a Facebook account, and every hand goes up. I said, how many of you read what you were agreeing to before you click the I agree button on your Facebook account? Never a single answer. These are Harvard students. If anybody's going to read the fine print, you hope it's going to be Harvard students. They don't. Nobody does. So a lot of the time, even when there are protections about sharing of data, we really have no awareness of how far they go. Data can be shared between commercial business partners, and there are sharing that also happens between government agencies and the private sector.
But I think even more serious is if a purchase requires that kind of a hand stamp, then if you become a non-person for whatever reason, someone decides they don't like your political views, they don't like the activism, they don't like the fact that you campaigned against the current president in the last election cycle, then you go to press your hand to the reader and it says rejected. Sorry, you don't count. We won't allow you to participate. Hitler actually did that back at the early part of his era of terror and control over Germany, actually determined certain things that Jews wouldn't be allowed to do, set certain streets that they couldn't walk down, that they were not allowed to enter, even set certain restrictions on what they could buy at the store.
Understand, how money works and how the only real way right now we have of hurting them is through money, which is one of the reasons they're trying to create a cashless society. Because as long as you and I have cash, we can eat. And as long as we can eat, we're free, at least we can defend ourselves. When you take the cash away and you create credit cards and then you create microchips, what you're doing is suddenly, we become the whim of the powerful people. They can punish us by pressing delete 3 times on the computer screen. Suddenly $10,000 turns into $10.
One of the most important developments in this privacy area that's come with the digital revolution is that Orwell's picture of loss of privacy, the government watching us, the surveillance cameras everywhere, certainly is true to some degree. There are surveillance cameras everywhere.
You go through your life, almost most of the time, some computer somewhere is recording something about you. And so if you think about it, it's just, tons of information on each of us. And then there are certain efforts of some kinds of data that are put together to build profiles and so forth. So there's just a lot of data. There's just a huge explosion of data being collected on individuals.
One of the things that people often say is, who's going to be watching me all day long? Who has the resources or the time to watch me? And the answer is really no one is going to be sitting there watching everybody. There's not enough resources for that. But the computers can do it. Now that we have almost unlimited storage capacity on computer hard drives, it's possible to record everything that happens in front of a video camera or every transaction that occurs, in a credit card database, for example. And that information is actually becoming immense. It was revealed in the New York Times that Walmart's database was as big as, if not bigger than, the entire internet.
After 9/11, a lot of the failures to prevent the attacks were attributed, rightly or wrongly, to the failure of different government agencies to share data with each other to form a complete picture that would have identified the terrorists before they got on the airplane. And so those walls between government agencies are coming down. And then it turns out in the U.S. there's data the government is prohibited from collecting itself, but which it can perfectly well go buy on the open market from private vendors. Even where there are walls that are supposed to keep the data separate, they come down.
I mean, just pretty much across the board, there's this ongoing demand for linking more and more of the information on individuals. What do you purchase at the credit card versus what your telephone where your telephone says you are now? Is this an opportunity to send you a text message and remind you to go to the grocery store, that they have a sale on orange juice? I mean, this is the kind of vision that many people have, and there's been a lot of effort moving towards that vision.
In a computerized age where information doesn't vanish into the air, but is always being recorded somewhere, and then collected, aggregated into a database, is that every purchase you make, every step you take where there's a public video surveillance camera, when you use a credit card, the searches you do on Google, all these things get collected. And the way the law looks at it right now is, well, you typed in that search term to Google, so you knew they were going to get it. Of course they have the ability to keep it. And because, as a practical matter, we have this giant information collecting system, the threat to privacy today is far, far greater than it ever has been.
It's more like the creation of an encyclopedia. And if you think about an encyclopedia, back in the old days when we had A through Z encyclopedias, you wouldn't sit down and read every single volume. But when you wanted to look up Amazonian tree frogs or the country of, Colombia, it was right there at your fingertips. And so I think what's happening with the database is the best way to understand it is that you're just a blip on the screen right now. But the moment someone wants to look you up and wants to drill down and find out about you, they open up your entry. And at that point, all of this data that's been collected really would paint a shockingly detailed picture of a single person's life.
With rising technology and with the motivating forces from the government level to push that technology in the direction of capability of monitoring human activity. With that technology emerging, it's very frightening because it means that totalitarian regimes will very soon indeed have the power to control and monitor every human being on the planet.